Today's episode was recorded on August 19th, 2025 in Los Angeles, California. Please be sure to check out our other episodes, including one with Jesse Reyes on the science of smell. Don't forget to click subscribe, and please rate the show on your favorite podcast platform.
I think that's part of the disconnect between us, and why songs like this, like about home, about coming home, about staying connected or questioning what happened, I think they strike individuals so profoundly because we all want that connection. We all want a home to go back to. We all want people around us who have known us our whole life. Just saying that makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. And in our modern world, we don't always have that.
We used to gather around the fireside, and the soft light fell on little faces fair. And we'd laugh and play and love each other. Our hearts were young and free from all care. And at night, we'd say our now Eilenas, and Mom, she'd sweetly tuck us all in bed. Yes, I want to be with that happy family when Jesus wakes us from the dead.
Welcome to Sing for Science, the show where musicians and scientists talk about music and science. I'm your host, Matt White. Each week we'll talk about a song by our guest artist and how it connects with our guest scientist's area of expertise. Today we'll be speaking with singer-songwriter Noah Cyrus about her haunting new album, I Want My Loved Ones to Go With Me. The album's title borrows from a Southern hymn of the same name that her great-grandfather, Reverend Eldon Lindsay Cyrus, wrote nearly a century before. Elaborating on the special meaning the hymn takes on for her, Noah has said that it's not dying that she fears, but the prospect of being separated from her loved ones at death that frightens her most. Also joining us is clinical psychologist and University of Virginia professor of psychiatry and neurobehavioral sciences, Dr. Kim Penberthy. Kim is part of UVA's remarkable Department of Perceptual Studies that explores unexplained phenomena like near-death experiences and what happens when we die, topics that institutions of comparable renown usually shy away from. Kim's work as both researcher and clinician are centered around comforting both the dying and grieving. Her work draws on data gathered from after-death communication, meditation, altered states, and the through lines that connect them. The title of today's episode on the podcast is I Want My Loved Ones to Go With Me, Considering Death and the Afterlife with Science. Hello, Noah and Kim. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
So I think the best place to start for me is to ask you to talk a little bit about Apple Tree, which is the song that you have very artfully built around an old recording of your grandfather singing. Mm-hmm. What's the story with that song?
You know, the story within the lyrics that I wrote is a song based around a relationship and the intense feelings of love and how that feeling of love can be used as weapons in different ways within the relationships, whether it is family or personal or romantic or friendship or whatever the relationship is. I think that you can kind of use the intensity of that relationship and the importance against the other person. And so that was just from witnessing and experiencing. And then I got into this deeper meaning when I was thinking of how can I involve this deeper into tying it back into my family. And I'm a child of divorced parents. And from growing up, you know, in a household that, you know, was very loving, but, you know, you're with two people that eventually are going to get a divorce. You kind of have that fear of when is that going to happen? And so I think now that it has, and that happened when I was in my 20s, which brought and sprung upon me a different type of feeling of loss, where it wasn't, I'm heartbroken right now. I was very okay with the way that life had turned out, and it wasn't my relationship, it was my parents. And, you know, I was very supportive of both people during that time. But the heartache around it was all the memories and all the pictures that we have are just that. And you aren't able to go back to it. So it opened this question of, well, what will it go back to after death? What will that relationship be like? Is it all going to be healed? Are we all going to be a family? Is it? So there's a really beautiful idea and picture of hope in that song of what I want that to be one day. And that also comes from a childlike mind and thought and fear and feeling. But yeah, I think I grew up in a Christian household where we believe in heaven and being reunited with our family and our loved ones. And I think that's been also the main factor that keeps me so close to that religion and is that hope and that fear and that thing to lean on is, oh, I will see them again one day because I believe it will happen. So it's scary whenever you're sometimes questioning that, you know, just as you do as you get older, you question everything. You think of science, you think of religion, you think of all of it. Even just to question it, like, feels scary because it's like, oh, if I question, I'm never going to see my family again. So it's a very weird thing, and it's kind of the mind of someone that grew up, you know, in a Christian household and the things that are kind of put on you and in religion and what you're learned to think will happen and what will not happen. And so it's kind of confusing. So it kind of has left me confused in adulthood of what really does happen or what do we think will happen. And apart from religion, apart from what I believe, because my beliefs are my beliefs. And sometimes, you know, just the fact of, it's a common thing, I think, science and religion kind of battling each other. And I don't think it's a bad thing when you wonder about that. And I don't think that means you're not what you say you are or what you practice or you don't believe in this or whatever. I think it can all be very, it's all very open and up to you, and I think what it should be.
Yeah, I think I agree. Often, you know, science and religion are seemingly at odds, but I think the beauty of what your department at DOPS is doing is they're taking on some of these questions of how do we investigate this kind of phenomena of near-death experiences and what happens when we die. And I do want to talk a little bit more about the hymn. I'm just, from a music standpoint, I'm so curious about how you built that song because it is so elegantly done. It seems like there's sampled bits of the piano, like
there are
under your song.
Yeah. So I mean, Mike, his work, Mike Rossi, he's produced the record, and his work just oozes elegance. So he is amazing, and he put in very crucial and really like painful hours of lining that sample up with the piano, because it did have to take, you know, we did have to bring it some semitones down, our original piano, and work it into the key of the actual song, which then I ended up re-recording our song. Because that hymn and that song has been around in my family for generations and was a song that, you know, my father heard in his home and then brought into his family's home, and was a song that I grew up listening to, and you know, every morning hearing my dad put the record player on and be playing that album of my grandfather's. And I knew I wanted to sample that song within Apple Tree. At one point I had actually like made a different part of that same song, like the actual chorus. But whenever it came to like, I'm making this song for this album, I wanted to make it more the feature, more focused on what my grandfather had to say, because that matched more with my feelings now as he's describing his loved ones and those that are there, like his children and his mom, but her eyes are growing dim. And I think some of those lines, there's, you know, we had to alter it and chop it up a bit, but he's describing what he has and what he's lost and the hope of seeing that all again one day. And that just matched who I was and where I am now, and what I think about, and what I kind of will obsess over, and sometimes feel like I'm kind of having like existential thoughts and crisis over. So it really just matched that also fear and obsession of love and what that costs. And I'm also engaged now, and
Congratulations.
thank you very much. And though we're both very young, like, my thought of one of us will lose each other one day, it's very intense, because that's just where my mind takes me with things. And it does get very existential, and like, just not, it gets a little crazy in my mind if I focus too hard on it.
Well, it's very human, you know. And the thing, I'll say one of the other things that I love about that song about Apple Tree is that era of Southern gospel music and that style I find so stirring. You know, it's like, it reminds me a lot of, like, if you ever see footage of Elvis just kind of backstage, or he's warming up with those hymns, and it's got like he's delivering, there's sermons within them sometimes. I know that your great-grandfather was a pastor, but was your grandfather a pastor?
So no, my great-grandfather was a Pentecostal preacher.
Okay.
And my grandfather, he sang gospel songs and gospel music, but he wasn't a pastor.
Yeah. He was a politician, right?
He was.
Yeah.
Democratic Party. But, you know, we always had the gospel and Southern roots in our blood. My grandmother, who you and I spoke about off camera, like, her piano playing was very off script and just by ear, and very beautiful. And that's also, you know, she had this one specific rhythm I remember her always playing. And when I played piano on XXX, it really just reminded me of my grandmother's piano playing. And I think that this, again, album really just ties back to so much family, whether it's characters inspired by family, or songs written by family, or about family, and ancient hymns, and you know, some feels ancient. I'm like, my great-great-grandfather, like, or my great-grandfather. That sounds like so crazy to say, you know what I mean?
Well, this is what Kim has pointed out, because Kim is from West Virginia, and she pointed out to me when we first spoke that for Southerners, the importance of ancestral ties is so much more profound than it is for Northerners, you know? So I would wonder, just when you're listening to that recording, you've got it, like you said, there's generations happening. I'd be curious to hear you guys talk a little bit about how that manifests, because I'm just a feelingless child of Connecticut.
Yeah, I think that's where like the ancient feeling to me comes from, is like, it feels like it's something that's been around for centuries, and that's something that was kind of undiscovered, and that's kind of how it showed itself in the song. Was it's kind of like this haunting voice coming out of this void, and giving you this powerful message. And it's kind of like seeing the clouds part, and like a ray of sun coming in, and like you're getting this message. But it did feel very like connected to my ancestors, because of the very openness of the metaphors and what he's talking about, and also just the sound of it. It didn't feel like you're listening to a modern record. It feels like you're listening to a very distant memory, or even a very close memory that, you know, you just can't reach, which is kind of what brought me back to my ancestors, and the feeling of ancestry, and just how beautiful music brings that out.
And I think it's not necessarily just a Southern thing.
I was just about to say that.
I think it is really, I think the people that were more isolated and more rural, so rural Connecticut, rural California, you know, we were connected by family because we had to support each other, and we often lived in extended family units. where I was the same way. I grew up listening to my grandparents play music. My grandfather and my uncle were ministers, and you had this sort of all infused in daily life. And so that can happen anywhere. And that helps you sort of maintain that connection. And I think that's why it can feel so disconnected when we lose a person, because that's part of our sort of core group. And a lot of individuals who now live in societies where they're sort of isolated, and we know loneliness is a huge problem for a big part of the world, at least in the developed world. I think that's part of the disconnect between us, and why songs like this, like about home, about coming home, about staying connected or questioning what happened, I think they strike individuals so profoundly, because we all want that connection. We all want a home to go back to. We all want people around us who have known us our whole life. Just saying that makes me feel good. And in our modern world, we don't always have that. And so I think that's why songs like yours are going to be really important to people and really strike a chord with people. It makes me think of Country Roads by John Denver. And if you go anywhere in the world, people know that song.
Yeah.
And I asked one time, why on earth do people in like Japan or Scandinavia or, know the song? And I was told by a social psychologist, it's because it's about going home and missing home and wanting to be home. And that we all have that desire.
Such a universal feeling.
Yeah.
There's this other thing that came up in your book that you attributed to a social scientist that I'm trying to get my head around. You said social scientists have hypothesized that death anxiety may be so prevalent because our human emotional memory combines with human higher level cognitive structures and enables us to anticipate and predict death. Was this the same John Denver social psychologist?
No, that's...
Can you help me make sense of that?
So the theory is that everyone is going to die. Every human, every creature, pets, flowers. What is different about humans is that we can know that. So we can think about that. Your pet cat is not laying up at night thinking about when it's going to die.
But I'm up thinking about when he's going to die.
Right. So it's that consciousness that that we have that makes it so challenging, and that's why we may fear dying and our pet cat doesn't. And so the theory is, well, why would we fear that? Especially if we know that maybe, our spiritual beliefs tell us there's something beyond. And part of it is that, we have a sense that we will go forever, that, our ego tells us that we exist and we are this persona. And so we cannot imagine not existing. But that is because we're only thinking of our one little piece of ourselves. But if you tie it back to the whole lineage, you think about, it's not just you existing in your body, in your personality, in your soul. It's all the people that came before. If you think of it that way, it's a bit different.
Sure. And then so this is actually, from what I understand, reading your book and then reading your colleague Bruce Grayson's book, After, he writes about near-death experiences. Some of the things that people bring back from near-death experiences is the promise of being reunited with loved ones. What do we know about that?
Yes. So in most of the studies, and some of you may have read about it, when we look at people who have experienced near-death, they have specific group of things that happen to them. And so it often includes moving towards a bright light and feeling out of their body, and then encountering loved ones who've passed on. So it can be ancestors, it can be recent folks who have died. Sometimes people engage with like a consciousness, like at a higher level, like they might describe it as God or Jesus or whatever is relevant for their spiritual or religious beliefs. Mm-hmm. And they often have a life review as well. Mm-hmm. And so we've studied so many thousands of these sort of experiences that we have a pretty good description of what happens. And yes, and the majority of people do describe meeting their loved ones. Mm-hmm. And what's remarkable is sometimes you even have examples of people meeting individuals that they didn't know had died or didn't even know existed. Mm. So maybe a sibling that died in childbirth that you never knew existed, and yet you see them. So these are some of the cases where we find some verifiable evidence to show that this is not just a hallucination or wishful thinking or some strange effect of the brain, that we really have overwhelming evidence to show that there's something going on. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious to know, what conclusion does a scientist draw from that?
Well, I mean,
what are some conclusions? What are the different hypotheses that's, like what is going on under the hood? I mean, I've had several scientists on this show, and I've pressed them to answer the why question. And most scientists want to answer the how question, how things work, but so many of them are reluctant to answer why. And I think these issues, these topics that you study, beg the question of why, And so I'd want to know, like, what conclusions do you draw from this unexplained phenomena?
Well, I would like to find out what other people think. I mean, because I think it is very unique to individuals who've had experiences, and it's not just near-death experiences. I mean, those are pretty rare compared to what we call after-death communications, which are communications from deceased loved ones to the living. And there's a recent Pew Research poll from 2023 that shows that for Americans, so Pew is typically in America, they asked people if they had ever had an after-death communication in their lifetime. And something like 56% of people said yes, they had. And they asked for the past year, and 44% said yes. So this is no longer like anomalous or weird or rare. I mean, this is half the population. And most of the people, if you make them feel comfortable and they understand you're not going to make fun of them or think that they're, crazy, they will tell you these things. These, what we would call transformative experiences, that come from these, just being open to it. So an after-death communication, or sometimes people achieve these states through meditative or contemplative practices. Prayer, Christian prayer, has always been a way to achieve that. In the U.S., we think now more of meditation like yoga or mindfulness meditation, but these practices have been around in every culture since the beginning of human history. I mean, we have, I think, this is getting back to answering your question, I think we're built this way.
Yes.
I think we're built to access this, and that it is a way to address what you're talking about, Noah, this sort of fear or questioning through contemplative. And maybe this was a function of religion and still is, or other spiritual practices, but I think we are built to understand this and to receive it, and that perhaps our modern history, our modern society right now is sort of blocking that, or, just not really promoting it, if that makes sense.
It does. And Noah, when I listen to the lyrics of the hymn, like those last, first of all, it's wild that the hymn title is so, it just kind of captures what you've described so well. But also the I guess it's the last couplet, your grandfather says, I want to be with that happy family when Jesus wakes us from the dead. Among everything that we're talking about, it just seems like there's something so archetypal and just so collective that we all experience. I'd be curious to know, like, when you started to feel that way.
When we lost my grandmother, and I also lost a friend whenever I was 18, and I think that the fear of that loss and the loss of losing my grandmothers, and I lost my grandfather very young, and my mom's dad passed away when she was 19. So I never met my grandfather on my mom's side. And my grandfather, he passed away when I was very young on my dad's side. And so I always carried the hope, that we all get reunited. Also for my parents, because I see how much it pains my mom. Also, today is the 5th anniversary of her losing her mom. In 2020, when we did lose my grandmother, I was also severely depressed and really didn't have much in me to want to carry on and want to live. But the loss of my grandmother and seeing my mom so distraught and so hurt, and that made me really want to get myself together to be there for her and to also live and experience life and not give that pain to my family. So it was really eye-opening when we lost my grandmother as well, just on how I wanted to live my life and if I wanted to live my life at all.
Yeah. And was among those transformative experiences, I had no idea that this was the case, but before we started taping, you said you had your own NDE?
I believe I have, yeah, just because it's weird. Like, sometimes if I'm like in the shower or if I take a bath, we were in a hotel that had a bathtub and I was so excited. So I ran such a hot bath and I started feeling like, okay, I'm going to faint. I should get out of the bathtub. And my husband was right there brushing his, sorry, hold on. My fiance was right there just brushing his teeth, getting ready for bed, and it got so hot. And I was like, okay, I need to get out. I feel like I'm going to faint. And I went to go hug my fiance around his neck, but I actually fell backwards and I hit my head on the bathtub. And there's been a lot of cases where people do hit their head and they don't wake up in moments like that.
Yeah.
And while I was down on the floor, I had this white tunnel vision almost, and what seemed like this shadow of this younger version of my mom, was standing there, and I felt my soul like looking, because I could hear the sound of my fiance trying to wake me up, and I could feel him shaking my body, but I couldn't find him. And I could just feel my soul like looking for him and traveling for him. And there was this vision of my mom, and it felt like, I didn't know why my body was shaking, because I felt like I was shaking, but it just felt like I was going somewhere. But I saw and experienced the things that you listed, which was like this tunnel and the white light and a vision of a loved one. And I felt my soul out of my body. I didn't feel connected to my body anymore. Though I could feel it shaking, I was traveling elsewhere.
Yeah.
My fiance also, whenever I woke up, literally said, "You were gone." Like, you were gone.
Yeah.
And he was so scared after that. And I was so scared. I had never experienced anything like that in my life before. I used to ride horses. I've hit my head. I've been concussed. But I've never experienced anything like that. And it did match so many of what people have told me near-death experiences are like. It was really just something unexplainable.
How do you make sense of it now? I mean, has it impacted you?
It did impact me. I mean, it's been like 2 years since that happened, but it did impact me. But, it really just raised a ton of question of what it was, and fear that like I could have been so close to something that would have been such a huge loss. And like,
Yeah.
I have a really heavy attachment to my mom. So this is where I really felt like that was the connection of that's what this is because I have dreams also, like, bad plane experiences, things like that. And in the last seconds, my last words, you wake up if you're like right about to the car, the whatever, whatever is happening in your dream and you're like feeling like you're about to die. Always my last words before I wake up is, I love you, Mom. Always, every time, every single time in a bad dream or anything. So I knew whenever I woke up, like I looked at my fiance and I was like, I really think like I just woke up from a near-death experience because I saw my mom and I could hear you, but you were so far away and I was just trying to find you. And it felt like my soul was just traveling and trying to find you and I couldn't find you.
And to me, that means you came back. You chose to come back. You were finding him. You weren't saying, oh, I'm drifting off, I'm gone, goodbye. So I guess that's why I asked how you interpret it, because for me, hearing it, I hear someone who was wanting to come back. And maybe even, we call it sometimes a rescue apparition. You saw your mother. That was a connection to say, yes, it's not time yet. You were connecting, looking for your fiance, saw your mother. So I guess I'm thinking of it in that way, where I hear stories like this and people are able in their mind to say, yes, I chose to come back. So I am here. And you're right. Sometimes I hear people say, Hemingway was one who was famous for this. He had a near-death experience and during World War I, when he was like young, 19, and he kept being fearful that he would slip out, like, because he knew he could, with his near-death experience, he knew his soul was not just his body. And so there are people that then sort of are like, wait a minute, I don't want it to, slip away. And I don't know that anyone has ever had that experience, so where they're living and breathing and everything's fine and their soul just leaves. So I think that fear is not founded in what we see in research. And what I would say to you is, I hope you can maybe let that just percolate and maybe think about, maybe I chose to come back and it was not my time. And so to me, that's a really beautiful thing. And that you saw your mother and you were looking for your fiance, that tells me you have these connections, these people here. And I think that's an amazing story. I'm so glad you're okay.
Oh, thanks.
Seriously.
And lost me.
It's an imperfect science, like most science, to describe what is a near-death experience. And of course, we don't all have doctors just handy to say, yep, and the reality is most near-death experiences are not where people are literally brain dead, their heart stops. That's much more rare. It's usually exactly what you're talking about, where there is something, a near miss, or you're out for a bit, and come back.
Yeah.
So I was,
like, the way my fiance explains it, it was quite a long time he was trying to get me to wake up, and he just, recalls saying, like, I really thought I was going to be leaving the hotel, like, because we were in a hotel. Yeah. And every time we go in a hotel, we moved into this new house, and anytime we go in a hotel that has a bathtub, because we don't have a bathtub, I will lay in there for hours. And so I just made it so hot, and I'm so heat sensitive. And it was just,
in the fall, yeah.
But it's so strange, because when I recall the story to him, I always say that I put my arms around his neck. And he's like, you never made contact with me.
Oh my God.
But in my brain, I had my arm around his neck. But he said, you reached for me and just went backwards.
Wow.
You tried to go for me and you just went backwards instead. Wow. And so what I explained it as is, and maybe you could clear it up for me, is I feel like I had fainted, which was I knocked out. And then I hit my head and I knocked myself either further unconscious than I was.
Yeah.
Is that...
It sounds like maybe some sort of heat stroke.
Yeah.
Or sort of dizziness getting up out of a hot bath really quickly. You could also be hypertensive, so
Yeah.
your blood pressure just bottoms out. And then you hit your head, and that'll do it too. Yeah, absolutely.
So it kind of was like two experiences of like knocking myself out. First of all, just my body just gave out. And then it just sent me into another, like what felt like another dimension, another place, another realm. Like it was really, I mean, interesting. Like, you know, it was scary and also really like terrifying for my husband. Really terrifying for my fiance. I just can't wait. Yeah. Just really, I was really worried about him for like the next few weeks, you know, and how that really impacted him. 'Cause it was just really scary. Like, you know, that he was feeling like he was like carrying my lifeless body, trying to wake me up on the floor of the bathroom.
But for you, I mean, it was something that was not just interesting, but maybe comforting in seeing your mom?
Yeah, I thought about it as like, I mean, that would just always be my choice, I guess, as whether it was to speak or say or whatever. I guess I've had so many dreams and experiences, because this is like a fear. I'm going to bed fearing death, you know, so I'll have dreams about it, you know. And I always notice that I always will say or make a connection to my mother in those moments. So, yeah, I guess, you know, I definitely was not ready. No, and I definitely...
and you came back.
Subconsciously or consciously, yeah.
What's the phrase that you used? Something apparition?
So there's a rescue apparition.
Would you be comfortable sharing your experience with the beach with your mother? That gave me goosebumps when you told me that.
Well, and thank you. And I'm happy to. I'm also quite attached to my mother, who has passed away. She was only 66 when she died. But this was when I was in my 20s, and we were in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. You probably are familiar with that. Mm-hmm. We both loved to go to the beach. For some reason, it was just the two of us. And she decided to go swimming, and I was laying there, like, getting a tan. And it was really bright, so I put a towel over my eyes and was sort of like halfway asleep. And then I heard this commotion on the beach, and it was more than the normal commotion. So I sat up for a little bit, and I could see. It was like really hard to see, you know, when your eyes are closed for a while and the sun is really bright. But I could see a crowd down at the ocean, and my mother was there, and the lifeguard was pulling her out of the ocean. He was on one side, and then there was this older man on the other side of her, and they were both carrying her up. And for some reason, I saw that she was okay, but I just stayed really calm, even though I was clear something was going on. And there was something that I just felt like I just should stay there because there was a big crowd, and I could see her. The lifeguard was sort of checking her out, and I could see her, you know, wave him off and say she was fine. And she came up to the towel, and it was a little bit of a walk, so I just watched her walk. And then I laid back down. She's like, "Lay down, Kim, go ahead, lay down." And so I just laid back down, and I said, Are you okay? And she said, "Yes, I'm fine." It was just a rip current that had pulled her out, and she couldn't get back in. And I was like, "Well, good. I'm glad you're okay." And then I'm laying there again with the towel. She's laying beside me. And I said, "Well, Mom, who was that guy helping you out of the water? Not the lifeguard, but the other older man." And she was just totally quiet for a while, and I thought maybe she didn't hear me. And she said, "That was my grandfather." Her grandfather. I had never met him. And that's all we ever talked about it. After she died, I found out from her best friend who went to nursing school with her that my mom was pretty much raised by her grandparents because her mother and father were not really the greatest parents. And, you know, my grandfather had died. My great-grandfather had died before I knew him at all. My grandfather died before I knew him. She said, well, do you want a picture of him? I've got some photos. And I said, well, sure. And I couldn't believe it when I saw the picture. I mean, it makes me want to cry now. It was him. It was the man I saw. And Linda, my mom's friend, said he basically raised her and adored her and would have done anything for her. And was really, you know, my mom's saving grace in her life because of the sort of tragic nature of her own parents. So I've always kept that, you know, you don't share those things too much with people because they're so intimate. And yet in my research, I came to find out what it is. It has a name. It's called a rescue apparition, that he returned his soul, something that love was so powerful that he manifested there to help save her. And it wasn't her time. So that's why I immediately thought of that with you and your mother. I just think, you know, I think we have these abilities that, that's why I study it. You know, I don't know for sure. I don't have all the answers, but I can research it. I can take people seriously. I can listen. I can study. I can't imagine that humans would have maintained these beliefs if there wasn't something to them.
Yeah, and that's profound. I think that you said this to me, that if we have, you know, compiled this massive database of experiences of people visiting some sort of other side, that's something that we cannot explain, that it's of equal possibility that someone who's transitioned to that other side could come visit us on this plane, right? Which is not something that I'd ever considered, but it's totally intuitive, right? Also, several books have dispelled the possibility that an NDE is purely hallucination.
Right.
Can you enumerate some of those? Like, why do we know that this is not just the brain going into fight or flight?
Right. I mean, and those are the cases, what you're talking about are the cases where we do have individuals in hospitals where we're monitoring them. We can see not only maybe their brain is no longer functioning, so they're flatlining, the brain function is gone, their heart is not beating. So we know, for example, that there are indications that people can still have these experiences when physiologically their physical body is not functioning, which we would call is dead.
Yeah.
So near-death experiences is sort of a misnomer because it can happen when you are dead and come back, or when you think you're dying, or about, or in the space where there's part of you that's, not there. But the part you're talking about that is so compelling is how on earth would this happen if you have zero brain function and zero heart function? You shouldn't perceive anything, let alone be able then to come back and share it.
Okay.
Because you wouldn't be recording any memories. You wouldn't be perceiving anything.
And the other thing that I like that he says in the book is that it's not a scientific fact that the brain and the mind are the same thing.
Correct. Because if you think about it, we still have what's called, the big problem. How does consciousness, which is not a physical thing, how would it arise out of an only biological thing, which is your brain? We don't know that. How does a hunk of what is, brain tissue, brain, how does that create consciousness?
And so is that part of the question that has driven you to look at NDEs, meditation, and altered states through psychedelics under the same lens? Yes.
And I think for me as a clinician, it's very interesting because I'm not as invested in finding out, is this, really happening? Are we really separate from our bodies, and consciousness is here and our brains are here? Maybe that's true. Maybe we're proving that. To me, what's most important is what Noah's been talking about, is what does the impact have on humans? Like, I'm sitting over here really wanting, the clinician in me is like wanting so much to say, I don't want you to be fearful and anxious. And I think our society is so fearful and anxious and fearful of death, and it's not healthy for us. And I think we've moved away from those religious beliefs that helped shape, maybe what that community belief was, which is you will come home, you will see those loved ones, you will have this ongoing life everlasting, as always in the hymns,
Because that's an extraordinary percentage of people who come back who have these experiences live with great equanimity, that we're going to may no longer fear death.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Like 76% or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the thing that when you first came on my radar, that just struck me, that it begs the question, if you're looking at if there are commonalities between NDEs, which are seemingly unexplainable, altered states through meditation, and psychedelics, what does that say about the thread that connects life here and the afterlife?
Yeah.
I mean, that is truly mind-blowing for me, and then I start to think about, what does it mean to have altered states? And I think about, like, what would it be for even in the teachings of Jesus Christ, like to fast for 40 days, what that might produce, what insights that might produce, and what we might have access to. I mean, I know when you and I chatted, we talked about Jung and the collective unconscious, and it's exciting, and I think that's why I'm so thrilled at the research you're doing. So I would love to hear more about what is that through line between meditation, psychedelics, and NDEs.
I think for me, it's all sort of an altered state of consciousness. Just like Noah was saying, you knew you were in a different place. Like this level of consciousness when we have a near-death experience, when we have even, I would say, we receive an after-death communication. We're in sort of this different state of mind than like how we are right here, right now, where we're sort of like rational and thinking, and
That's in a dream, typically.
The after-death communications, no, they can be totally awakening. They often happen in dreamlike states, like right before you fall asleep, right before you wake up. They can happen anytime, though. But yeah, we can induce them through meditation, that sort of thing. So I think all of these are just sort of different paths to this openness, this altered state of consciousness. When we look at psychedelic research that I'm starting to get into, we're looking at the same thing. It sort of opens up, especially psilocybin, this flexibility in our way of thinking, our level of consciousness. So interestingly, if you think about what happens when you take psychedelics, specifically psilocybin, you often have an out-of-body experience. You often have experiences similar to near death. You see bright lights. You have contact with ancestors. You might feel...
This has never happened to me. I've done plenty of psilocybin. How come that's not happening to me?
Yeah, I want your money back.
I'm just staring at the walls, watching the paint move, wondering, how is that working?
Maybe we need to get you a pharmaceutical grade. Yeah, there we go.
She's the plug.
But there's this sort of connection to this altered state for many people that you can produce through meditation, through different kinds of meditative or contemplative practices, like we mentioned, prayer, even Christian prayer. The contemplative prayer, there was a method there of sort of inducing. It's this altered state that we think allows access to some of this. So neurologically, what we see are things like the default mode network, which is sort of what's active when we're thinking and weighing and predicting. it's reduced. And so we know there are some changes, but not changes like in ways where we see a lot more activity, like all the colors are like lighting up and everything. It's more that the brain is quiet. So to me, one of the thoughts is, does that mean maybe the brain is getting out of the way and allowing access to, these sort of other altered states?
So this is one theory, that the brain is kind of a filter, right? For something that's being downloaded, for lack of a better phrase, right?
Right. Like the analogy is like a radio. Yeah. So like the brain is a radio, but the radio waves are out there. And so you have to have a working radio to pick up the radio waves. Right. But the radio waves are still there no matter what, whether your brain's working or not.
And you had said that something about the default mode network shutting down. I think I've read about that in research surrounding awe, like experiencing awe, which Noah earlier was talking about, kind of like childlike wonderment, and having that. To me, those all kind of exist under the same.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Did you say that you can induce states that would invite after-death communication?
Yes, there's people doing research in our lab, actually. So looking at, you can get into, it's a meditative state, essentially. So very similar to what you might do if you were doing a deep meditation, that allows you then, if you concentrate on, that wanting to invite that in, that communication, allowing that. And so we're looking at specifically the brains and what's happening in the brain when that is happening. And we predict, again, changes in the default mode network that might be suppressed and allow these. So it's very, very much in its infancy.
Can you share any details? And it's
I
fascinating.
mean, we have not run any subjects yet, so.
Yeah. So the idea is that you could invite that experience.
I had a patient who was struggling with prolonged grief, and this is one of the reasons I got interested in the research I'm doing now, looking at psilocybin for people with prolonged grief. And he was just not functioning anymore. He had lost his wife, who was like his high school sweetheart, and he was just beside himself. There was nothing that was going well for him. And so he had never meditated. At this time, I didn't have the psilocybin study, so I couldn't offer that. I offered to teach him strategies for meditation, and he learned that. And it was really a struggle because it's hard for people, especially if they've never done it and they don't believe in it and things like that. And he learned, and he was able to get fairly good at it. It was sort of just a Vipassana meditation, just sort of focusing on being present and his breath. And then he reported that he had an experience where he realized what was wrong was he was 100% sure that he loved her. He loved her with all his heart. He had been married to her over 40 years. He did not know if she loved him. And now he would never know because she had died. And this was just...
That was the source of his grief?
That was the source of his grief. And he couldn't move forward because he would never know. So it was this yearning to know that he could never know. In one of his meditations, he got very deep, and he told me that she came to him, and it was a very intimate, and he said, I'm not going to share the details. I said, that is fine. I don't need intimate details. He said, now I know she does love me. His grief improved. He was able to move on because he knew she loved him. It answered that question. He had evidence of her existence. She still existed, that still a connection. That was what he needed. And so I think, for people, especially grieving, we're talking now more about grieving instead of the fear of death, but it's that sort of, what is it that's holding you captive? What is it that won't allow you to continue to go on? And trying to find that and break that open and let that go and answer that question.
And isn't it the case that you can, in your work as a clinician, that you can offer comfort to grieving with data from people who've experienced NDEs or ADC? Mm-hmm. What does that look like? How do you implement that?
Well, so there's been limited studies looking, I think Bruce Grayson did some of this work, looking at how just even telling people about these stories, and showing them like these are real, scientists collected this data, that alone can help change how people perceive things. So just learning that near-death experiences happen and that people, real, legitimate, sane people have received these experiences and what they discovered, that there is a continuity, that there is connection, that there is still this personality or this soul that is continuing to exist. That seems to be, the key to, if people allow themselves to sort of let that in.
Yeah. Well, you say this, there's this great quote in your book. You say, imagine a world focused on promoting and celebrating this interrelatedness. Imagine the positive impact on the world if everyone behaved as if we were connected in a larger way to others, or that we would see each other again. And I hear this come up a lot in philosophy circles. They're asking whether or not consciousness is fundamental, like down to the smallest particles, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people that are driven to look into this are people who have had these profound insights through meditation, through psychedelic experience. And it just seems like that the common thread is that everything is far more connected than we could possibly know, which is intuitive on its face. But when you kind of get in just sort of the day-to-day grind,
right,
you lose sight of it.
Right.
Is there anything else that we can go over? Any questions you have for one another?
I don't know. I don't know. It's been so nice to just sit here and talk. But I guess we didn't really get on like communication and like where, because, I'm actually a friend of Tyler Henry's. Mm-hmm. And are you familiar with his work? I guess I wonder where the consciousness connects and like where that comes from and where like some other people access it and others can't. And like, is that something that like what you practice, like, do you believe in that work as well? And how do you, like, if someone wants to make it an intention to connect, like, how would a normal person that doesn't have that, like, how does someone go about the contact? Is it like setting an intention before bed? Of course, you mentioned like meditation, but like, is it really through mediumship that you make those connections, or like?
I think you're right. We haven't talked about this as much. And part of it is that a lot of what we study at the Division of Perceptual Studies are spontaneous. So these, like, it started off looking really at like near-death experiences, children who remember past lives, things like this that are spontaneous. And mediumship is sort of, you do have people often that say this spontaneously happened to them. They're just sort of born this way, or sometimes something happened to them and then they have these abilities. We have one study that's ongoing that's looking at what is happening to people in like their brains when they are receiving this information. And the big challenge, as you can imagine, is most of the mediums that we bring in say, I don't work this way, like hooked up to all the EEGs and in a little box where no waves can get in, no communication. And, so it's a very artificial, strange sort of setup when we bring them in and say, okay, well, you're all wired up and we're going to look at your brain. Now do it. Right. Now talk to this person, So I think it's just much more challenging. And, to me, I think it is an interesting question. What are they tapping into? And some of the research that we look at would be, are they tapping into some like collective unconscious, something like that? Or is it, are they reading someone's mind? So these are both sort of paranormal type experiences, but it's hard to know which is which, if that makes sense. And for researchers, that does make it, we want to know that, and that's really challenging. So, I think there's clearly demonstrated that people have abilities. It's just very challenging to study them in a way, the way science does now.
But God bless you all for trying.
We're trying. We're in there slugging it out, trying. So.
But like I said, I mean, so many institutions really avoid this topic, or all of these topics. So who was it that you mentioned? Who you're friends with?
Tyler Henry.
And what does he study?
He's a really profound and amazing medium. And he just came by my house as a friend around a little bit after I lost my dad's mom, just because I was kind of dealing with the loss of my mom's mom in 2020, and then this happened in 2022, so it all just kind of felt really fresh to me, and I wanted to make contact in some way, and there were these stories and things that were coming to him that felt familiar, oh, that could have been this person, that could have been that person. But I also, we talked about this earlier, is how much we love our animals. And a big fear of mine is what about animals? And what about their soul? And what about their spirit? And is that something that people see or connect with again? Or because I'm scared I'm never going to see my dogs again. I'm but my big hope is that, hopefully one day when we're reunited, he's running on a fluffy cloud of heaven towards me and, just going to get licked to death. But do people ever have those near-death experiences and see their animals?
Absolutely. People see their animals in near-death experiences. They also have after-death communication from their animals.
I know, I've heard about this with people.
Yeah. And it's, it can be seeing them again or feeling their presence, or, people report they're in the bed and they feel something jump up and there's nothing there, but it's just so yes. That is something for sure that we see.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I just recently had my first dream after I lost my horse, really tragically and suddenly,
oh my gosh.
To a tumor that we just had no idea that it was there. There were no signs, and he was actually rehabbing his leg at the time. And when we found him, we thought he was foundering, and that's when he's laying down too long, and the intestines will twist, and surgery is possible, and it's kind of a roll of the dice. Whenever you're putting anything that big to sleep, there's always a roll of the dice. And I had my feelings whenever he went into surgery that I probably wouldn't see him again. Though everyone says positive thinking, I'm a very realistic thinker, and I'm a very factual thinker, and practical, where some people will call it negative. I say practical. But, after I lost him, it was about 20 minutes after getting the call and going to the hospital and laying with him as they put him to sleep, and the whole experience of seeing such a large animal on its back and on a table after being lifted by a crane. It's just such a unnatural experience and way to be seeing such a large animal. It was, I've been through it with dogs, and it just was an experience unlike anything, just because of the mass and the everything, the room, it was just so weird and unnatural. But leaving the hospital, I put on this song called If I Get High by Nothing But Thieves. Beautiful song if neither of you have heard it. And the lyrics repeat, if I get high enough, will I see you again? And I'll meet you at the divine and I'll see you again. And I put the song on and it starts skipping about like 20 seconds through, and it's just playing on Spotify, and it's, you know, I had a fairly new Jeep with Bluetooth, and it wasn't playing
like
through
a CD.
Yeah, it was skipping like a CD, but like I've never experienced it ever on a streaming platform ever again. And the song just kept starting, singing about 10 seconds, and then skipping. And it did it the entire drive home from Camarillo to here in, you know, the valley. So it was a very long, hour-long ride drive where the song, I just let it skip the whole way. And I made the connection afterwards when I got home and I looked at it and my jaw was on the floor when the single art is literally a horse in this foggy, ghostly environment, and you just see his face coming out of this mist. And I completely forgot that was the single art, and it was just so weird that that had happened. And I really felt like I had made that connection, and it was him saying, I'm okay, and I'm still here, and I'm okay. You know, I'm not in pain, and I'm okay. And I've really wished for so long that I would see him again and have a dream about him. And recently, I had a dream about him. And I woke up and I called my mom, just so happy. And it makes me cry now because I literally told her year after year I would give anything for that experience, just to like hug him and like feel him and know that he's okay. And that happened to me at the beginning of this year. And it's just something that every night before I go to bed, I hope for again.
What's his name?
Constantine.
And
it was really just
what a gift.
The best gift that I really just, and I honor him in my work, and I work with white horses specifically in my music videos to honor him and cherish that bond that we had. But really seeing him again for the first time, it felt so real and it felt so physical. It really just, it felt like one of those experiences you were explaining where it comes to you by dream or when you're falling asleep. I don't get touched by dreams like that so easily, but it was really just so close and so real that I could smell him. And it really was just the best gift that, you know, I'm 25. This happened almost 10 years ago. And it still like pains me like it was yesterday. And we were there in that room, but he was okay. And it was, again, just, you know, something that every night before bed, I'm like, oh, just come back. You know, let me just have that moment one more time. So for me, the interest of mediums and talking with, you know, animals, it's always been something I wanted to actually go after, but I just haven't yet. But yeah, that was something that happened recently.
That's powerful.
And it was, I just called my mom right when I woke up. And the same goes for my mom. She lost her mom in 2020. And she just recently had her first dream of her mom. And it really is just such a special gift that you're like, just, you know, my advice to her is just hold on to it as much as you can. And don't forget that feeling, and don't ever mistake the feeling as just, if it's a sign or something.
Or
you know, for me, it was
something.
After Mammy had passed away, when I would sing, certain lights would flicker. And I would always connect that to her because I would beg her to show me a sign and the light would flicker. And I would start singing and the light would flicker. And so I told my mom, like, when things like that happen, or you wake up and you're missing your mom and you see a butterfly outside, or you see two, don't take that for granted. You know, I I don't know if you're aware of Dr. Mary Hensley, but she is a dear friend of mine, and she passed away in a car accident when she was very young. And she explains meeting her spirit guides and them saying, you know, she had this mediumship since she was a child. She would see her grandfather at the kitchen table, and her dad and mom had to sit her down and ask her, do you know the difference between life and death? Because she would so frequently talk and see her grandfather and be able to predict these sicknesses because grandpa would tell her. And she gets in this car accident, and she's experiencing everything from bird's eye view. She's seeing someone leave their phone number as a witness, and the police officer pulling her out, and she's able, once she woke up, was able to recall and tell them all the things that had happened to her. But she also recalled meeting her spirit guides, these 3 different guides, and this kind of movie of her life, and was given this decision of, if you go back, will you use this gift to help people and to heal people? And now that's her life's mission. And I've worked with her, and she was really there for me a lot through my addiction and through the death of my grandmother. And she had asked my grandmother for a sign. And in the midst of winter in Ireland, where she lives, she was making this intention before she went to sleep, and a butterfly, when she woke up, was on her pillow. In the middle of winter in Ireland, there's not a lot of butterflies. She's in her house, doors are closed, but she wakes up and there's a butterfly on her pillow. And she called me the next morning, and she was like, I asked for a sign, and she took a picture and videos, and there it was, and it was in her room and in her house. And I just think of these little things and these signs, try not to question them so much, or try not to wonder or take the mystery or the enchantment out of it, you know, the gift away from it, because whether it was something divine or something, you know, it's just the remembrance at all is such a gift.
Absolutely.
Just the remembrance of the love and the memories and the warmth the person gave, or the horse smell, or whatever it is that you miss so much about that person, you know.
Do you experience the horse smell ever, just kind of in passing?
When I do smell it, you know, it's so, like, I forget what we did recently that I was like, it smells like a horse and I want to eat it. And like, I want to eat the grain. Like, they were like, have you ate horse grain before? And I was like, actually, I have tried it because it just smells so good. If you're a horse girl, like, everything about the horses smell good. The hair, the hay. Like, my horse used to have on Sundays this special oatmeal and like would slop it up. Like, it was warm oatmeal that I would give the horses. And I was always so jealous because I was like, that smells so good. The sound of you eating it is so satisfying. My grandfather told us the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man.
Yeah.
And it is the truest statement, and has been there for me through everything in life. And when I met my horseback riding teachers, Coast and Nick Karazisis, which they both symbolize this grandfather figure for me my entire childhood riding horses. They were there for me. I rode 10 years with them. And the first time I ever met Nick Karazisis, he said to us, the outside of a horse is good for the inside of man, just like the way my grandfather said it. And there's definitely different variations of how you can word the saying. And it was just exactly how he said it. And there it was again, this divine sign of, I have family here. I belong here. I have a connection here. And these horses and these connection, they really connect you to something different. And that's why I so strongly believe in why equine therapy is so powerful. It's because there is something so majestic and so divine. And I think that's how unicorns were created, is like, horses are unicorns. They are magical. They are healing. They are powerful. They are special. They are healing. And it's a gift when you get to experience that. And that's what made that dream so powerful for me.
Yeah. I'm so glad.
Yeah, but it's been such a amazing and pleasure to be in your presence and,
the same.
Learn so much from you. And
I am just thrilled.
I'm ready for that dose that you offered me. I'm coming to the clinic. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being so open. And I think if more people hear this and understand, we're two rational people talking about this, we can have conversations.
Yeah, and I think that it's not something so far away.
Yeah.
And something that, like this idea of ghosts and, like, do you believe in them? Do you not? Like, I just think of it as like, how you said, if so many people have the same experience,
right,
then it must be there. And it's like kind of like the same feeling with me. Like, I believe in aliens through and through. If so many people have experienced this connection or seen this light or made meditation and this extraterrestrial being is coming to, like, I believe in that. I believe in these experiences, and what I don't believe is telling somebody that it's not real or it's not true. Because who is one person to say that in the entire universe that we don't feel energies, we don't make contact with something else.
More to the point, we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. And it doesn't serve any purpose to shut it down.
No.
As a scientist, you asked like the what and the why. It is to explore and to not make assumptions and to trust what others share with us. So that's what we've done here today, and it's wonderful, and I hope more people will do that.
And my last question is, do you feel like, even through as much as you practice, like, no, like that, as much as you practice it, you still won't know, right? Until it happens? Or do you feel like through these experiences that there are facts, like there are, or do you feel like it's something that you could study forever and you may never know?
I think as a scientist, I want to answer that two ways. I think as a scientist, it's hard to say you come to a conclusion because you're always looking. There's always the null hypothesis is the way we operate. You're trying to show that it is, likelihoods type of things.
What is the null hypothesis?
So you're trying to prove that it's more likely one way or the other, but you can never say for sure.
Okay.
So it's sort of like you're building up evidence. And I am really okay with some unknowns. Mm-hmm. I'm okay saying, well, maybe I'll have to wait on that one. And I'm fine with that. I think it's, I trust talk about animals, yeah. I mean, I trust that people are sharing their experiences and those are real for them and the impact is real, I mean, we've seen that here today, real emotion, the impact is real. And that's enough for me. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and Carl Jung, kind of the architect of modern psychiatry, said that it is proven to be beneficial to humans to believe in something that cannot be proven.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that too. Yeah. we both got silent. We were like, tea.
Well, I'll see you both at the clinic.
Yeah. I'll be there. I'll beat you there, I bet.
Everyone's invited, right?
Be sure to check out Noah's new album, I Want My Loved Ones to Go With Me, and catch her on tour this fall. For more information, please visit her website, noahcyrus.com. To stay up to date with Kim's work, please visit the UVA DOPS website, med.virginia.edu/perceptual-studies. Sing for Science is co-produced by Talkhouse and made possible in part by a grant from the Simons Foundation. Our music is by Panoram. Social media manager and video editor is Bailey Constas. Location engineers were Alex Waxenbaum and JJ House. Audio engineer Lou Carlozo. And our digital producer is Keenan Cush. If you like Sing for Science, the best way you can support us is to give us a review, tell a friend about the show, and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. For more information, please visit singforscience.org and follow us on social media at Sing for Science. Thanks for listening.